Welcome to the Maple Leaf Hot Stove Podcast, episode 109. We are back from a mini hiatus. Anthony Petrielli taking the generous nearly 1 month paternity leave from the podcast. I'm Nick Ashbourne here with Anthony. A lot has happened since we last spoke. It's been
Y- You have one kid and everything goes to shit and then comes back to life all in the span of podcast recording.
well, they tell you it's going to be chaotic, and that's what it's been over last month. We spoke in kind of early mid-December, and it was very much that things looked like they'd turn around a bit. It was a 5-1-1 stretch that we had spoke about, and that the question that we addressed at the time was like, how much does this look like what they're going to be going forward? And we were, I wouldn't say crazy optimistic, but we were fairly optimistic that, they looked like they were on track and it all fell off the table. Things went pretty horribly wrong for a second there. And then as we, sign on to do this podcast again, we're actually looking at a pretty similar stretch. Like they had the Marc Savard firing, and I don't want to position it as this is a one-to-one of what caused it, but since that happened, it's a 5-0-2 stretch. It has not been perfect throughout. There have been some dicey moments for the team, but still getting 12 of a possible 14 points when you're in that playoff race is it's impressive and it's important. Anthony, where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, last time we started with the optimism meter and I had it at a 7 and then they fell off the proverbial cliff, like they went full 18 wheeler and that 7 looked like the worst number ever. And then they fired Marc Savard, and there's something to be said about causation and correlation, but since then the power play has heated up, which I do think that there's a correlation there. And then the overall team has started to play better as a bit of a ripple effect. And so ultimately, where it's left us is they're still, firmly in a bubble spot, but now they've actually passed some teams. They've created a little bit of distance between themselves and the bottom. We also, Chris Tanev was back and starting to show signs of life. And then we obviously between recordings, he gets hurt and now, his season is potentially in jeopardy. We think William Nylander and Jake McCabe will be back very, very soon, both of them. All that to say is like I'm still if the question is like, are you optimistic that they make the playoffs? I still think I'm pretty much in the same boat, and it really hurts not having Tanev, but I still look at them and say like, this is a good hockey team.
Depends what you mean by good. You know what I mean? Like,
And in the context of making the playoffs.
sure. Like, I think that they are a team that if the season started again today and you gave them 82 games, I feel like they would make the playoffs. But they have dug themselves a little bit of hole. I think there's still an element of jeopardy there. The big question
Is
for
it
me
that
at
big of a hole at this point? Like, I don't think they need to play anything crazy.
they
Like,
play.
like they could play at a rate worse than they did all of last season and make the playoffs.
Yes, but last season they played at a pretty high rate, and this year they're missing Tanev, and the defense has been hollowed out, and the possession issues are still an issue, and the
Has the
goaltending is
defense been
great with.
hollowed out, or are they missing Tanev? Because those are two different things.
Well, I mean, now Carlo is back, so that feels a little bit different, and it depends where the McCabe injury is. So if McCabe comes back in a couple of days, then also. Benoit and Myers have both been worse than expected. Like Myers in
Yeah.
particular has been really bad, and they've had to play him a lot. So there's a lot going on. I think that it is still there. People should feel pretty optimistic at this exact moment, and I think a big reason why is the play of Auston Matthews recently, right? Like we spent so much time talking about, can he be that guy again? What is the new baseline for him? How hurt is he? And I'm not ready to say like, hey, everybody, he's 60 goal Matthews and it's all coming back and it's exactly how it used to be. But we're seeing signs of life in this moment, unlike we've seen in kind of a year at this point. I don't know if you felt this at times last season, but that has always been the thing with the Leafs. So, like, if Matthews is not really going to be great, then they're not going to be good. And right now, he's looking great. And that is a huge differentiating factor to any kind of optimism gauge you would throw on the team at any other point this season.
we spent so much time in the summer talking about like how Matthews should be fine without Marner, which I still believe. I think you're starting to see signs of it. And then it just hit a point this year where you're like, this guy's playing like he's Jordan Stahl. Like he's not even taking chances. He's just like out there happy to defend. And you're the second highest paid player in the league this year, or second highest cap hit. You're making over $13 million. Like there's a responsibility here. And it's interesting as those conversations perk up, right? You start hearing people, oh, look, there's another guy that's getting run out of town. I'm like, he's not getting run out of town, but like there's some expectations when you make that much money. Like you can't be clicking at 0.75, zero point 0.8 points per game like you're Jason Zucker in Buffalo. Like you need to light it up. That's the rule. Like either you absolutely dominate the ice and maybe it doesn't show in the point totals or the point totals are insane. But like it has to be one of those two. He wasn't close to either of them. And Christmas break, I thought he started to show signs of life against Detroit. Like he was good against Detroit. He had that breakaway play where he was like falling on his back and he sliced the puck and it was like kind of a cool shot thing. But then in overtime, he absolutely annihilated one off the bar. And he scored the goal. The game where they destroyed Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and he scored the goal to make it like 6-2. And it was like Domi gave him like a drop pass and he like came in and everyone's like, there's Matthews. I was like, how is that Matthews? That's not even a
That
good
was just
shot.
that was a shot.
Like he shot it like fine, but like it wasn't like he labeled that puck and you were like, oh my God. But the shot that he took in overtime in Detroit, I was like, oh my God. And then he misses the next game and since then he's come back and he's been on one. He has 11 points in 5 games. And I mean, it's not sustainable to do that, but like I don't think it's far off from what should be expected of him. Like what, 9 in 5? So, he makes the whole thing tick. Nylander's not even playing right now. And I just look at them and say, like, you have 4 lines. Like I think they have 12 guys or 14 guys if everyone's healthy at forward that they could justify putting in the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, the fact that this is happening without Nylander is perhaps under discussed. Nylander has been their most effective offensive weapon for most of the season. Like you can put aside the power play because the power play has been fucky for most of the year. But in terms of like five
Awful.
on five play, Nylander's been critical to that. He's out now and they're forced to spread the talent. Like how much have we talked about, not having all the same guys bunched together and spreading the talent a little bit and how that can be effective for them. And there's been so much resistance to doing it, whether it was Keefe, whether it was Berube, like there's, Matthews and Marner stapled together all the time, like a lot of reluctance to put different guys down the lineup. And now when you have Matthews and Tavares and you don't even have Nylander, it's like you kind of have to give other guys shots to have big minutes, and you kind of have to try and have as many lines as you can that threaten in their own ways. Because if you tried to bunch it up now, you don't even really have the guys to do it. So next thing you know, you've got Matthews with McMann and Domi, which we've questioned the idea of McMann and Matthews in the past because we just think McMahon's going to shoot it all the time. And to his credit, he's
Been
been
passing.
the workhorse, and he has been passing a little bit. Um,
He looks great.
he looks really good. He looks really like the guys that I have the soft spot for, McMahon and Michelli. Great stretch
So
for these guys.
So not only did McMahon lead the team in goals in December, but in this stretch from Christmas to now, in which they've been on this heater, do you know where he ranks in forwards in terms of time on ice per game?
That's a good question. He's got to be up there, but he doesn't do a ton of special teams. I don't know, fourth.
Try second.
Wow,
Like
he's earned it.
he played
Like
over
he's earned it.
19 minutes against Florida. Like
Fair
we've
enough.
we've criticized Knives at points, which I still think it's totally justified. And it's not lost on me that him going off that line and the speed of McMahon being put on that line has really because Domi, Matthews, and Knives got a run of play. It's not like we haven't seen Domi with Matthews. The difference is McMahon is there now, and his speed is like changing the entire dynamics of that line. And one of the things early on that people were complaining about, they're like, this team's old and slow and they lack talent. I'm like, they're not slow. We had a full discussion about this when Alec joined. I'm like, this is not a slow team. And they don't look slow to me when you're watching them play. McMann is burning out there. Robertson has a motor. Cowan has a motor. Domi's not slow. I don't think Auston Matthews is slow when he wants to be. Lawton can skate. Like, he- I'm not watching them play and saying, wow, this team is slow. And they're top five in the league in goals per game. And that's with the power play that hasn't existed until 2 weeks ago. How do you do that if you have no talent?
I
I
mean, I
don't
think
like,
I think they have been a little bit on the lucky. Like when you look at their 5-on-5 goal production, I would imagine that's going to come down a little bit. Like the
I'm
shooting
sure it
percentage is
will.
of but the power play over the course of the year, even though it's been great recently, that over the course of the year, the power play has been pretty shit. And so as a result, that should to some degree even itself
The,
out.
the power play should hedge it. But I also will say like we're not talking about like a 1 month run of them being like top five in the league in goals per game. We're talking about over half a season and counting now. Like they genuinely have shooting talent.
Yeah, I would say
Like
so. I
like
think they have above average shooting talent for sure on the team.
like that, I understand the percentages and how things work, and yet you're like things are gonna regress at times. 1,000,000%. But like to sustain it for half the year, like you actually genuinely need some shooting talent. Like I'm looking like Nick Robertson has shooting talent.
Well, and he's
Obviously,
playing a bunch more, right? Like, and
yeah,
guys who have negative shooting talent, like we harped on Holmberg so much last year. You don't have
negative
to go
shooting
down that road,
talent.
but like he's there, he's there on the second line a lot of the time, or at least the third line. Calle Yarncrook, who used to talk a lot about moving him up and down the lineup. It's not viable anymore. Like if he's in the lineup, he's on the fourth line at this point. The fact that Robertson is moving up, the fact that Cowan, and it's not like Cowan is sniping a ton of goals, but he is someone who can make a nifty play and he can beat a goalie. And so, when Nylander gets back too, that'll change the complexion of it a little bit. Even, Michelli, not super dangerous from a shooting standpoint, but like at least a little bit of skill there. And he can create, easier shots for others, as we've seen when he's been effective recently. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I expect that this team is going to score at the top of the league the vast majority of the season, and that's, the way forward for them. But a lot of the alarmism about how the Leafs would decline this year was this presumption that Marner was going to leave and that was going to be just this massive difference maker. And the promise of having more depth up and down the lineup, having three lines, having four lines, not one to one as a result of his departure, but partly because they get that space and they bring in, I know Joshua hasn't generally been that effective, but you bring in Waugh and Michelli and Joshua, like it sort of looks like that now, even though some of that is Cowan, which is not exactly what you expected, and some of that is Robertson, which I guess, some people are bullish or more bearish on Robertson, but he's exceeded expectations. I think it's fair to say. Like it hasn't come about in the way you thought it might, but the vision of this is a deeper group of forwards who can hit you in more different ways, there is something to that now.
Yeah, and look, we missed a lot of time, so it's tough to kind of go through without like relitigating every single thing that happened, and I don't want to do that. But I do think we owe like some level of, I don't know if you want to call it like scanning through what happened to some degree. Like you catch the Oilers and McDavid and Draisaitl are playing out of their minds at that point. And they torch you. Like they just lit them up. And at that point to me, like we talk about Matthews, it was pretty concerning that like he didn't even look like he belonged on the ice with them. And he used to be like neck and neck pretty much. I don't think anyone reasonably ever thought Matthews is better than McDavid, but you would sit there and say like these are two like the top three guys in the league.
Yeah, like if you
And
were a big homer, you could tie yourself in knots and be like, what about the defense? And like goals are worth
like
more than assists. Like you could try and make that type of argument. I agree. I don't think
like
McDavid's ever been worse, but like he
yeah,
was in that echelon
but you definitely would have ran the combo that like Matthews is better than Draisaitl at points.
for sure.
And he didn't even look competitive to it. And at that point, it's like Hughes came into Toronto and had the hat trick and lit them up, and like McDavid came in and ran a train, and like you're starting to watch like a few of these guys. You're like, how are these guys constantly coming into your house and just torching you? Like you got to have some pride, like just as a competitor and like a guy who considers himself one of the best players in the league. Like you can't have these guys coming in and just showing you up in your own barn. Like this is like your barn. Like when people come here, they got to know like this is Auston Matthews. And like that wasn't to me like that wasn't like the rock bottom. And then they basically salvaged themselves the win against Chicago. They came back late, and that one, that was the whole character win when there was not a character win. It was a terrible
Yeah,
Chicago team without Bedard, and
that
by the
was one
grace
of the
of
more
God,
shameful wins you're gonna get. But they were
yeah.
they were clinging to anything
And
they could get at that point, and they were trying to spin that.
and at that point, you're like, they just had the hot run that we had previously spoken about. You know, that Oilers loss was the only regulation loss to that point in the month, right? They lost in the shootout to the Habs. They lost in overtime to the Sharks, which was annoying, but you're like, okay, whatever, I can get through this considering all the points they picked up. And then the bottom fell out. Like the Washington game, entirely outclassed 4-0, brutal. You lose to Nashville, terrible, terrible hockey team. And now you're like, okay, we're going into Dallas. How's that going to go the next night? And they lost the game, but I actually thought they outplayed them. I
Yeah,
just
that
kind
was
of
a tough one because in a different context, you might have been able to say like, listen, sometimes the puck doesn't go your way, but that was a credible effort. But like
100% it
they
was.
really needed the points, and it was such a bad moment where the team was at that it was hard to make that case.
They had so many chances, and you kind of like looked and went, like, are your top guys going to score goals at any point here? Like at some point, it's like Matthews had a breakaway, missed. Nylander had looks in front, missed. Tavares had looks in front, missed. And you're kind of just watching, going, I don't know. You guys are the best players on the team. Like at some point, you have to actually cash your chances. This isn't like we're not here for fun. This is the job. And so that was a frustrating loss to me. The score didn't reflect it appropriately, but just the look and feel of things, the top guys, the way everything was going, and then they finally pulled trigger on Savard. And at that point, if you look at that month, it's kind of funny when you go through it. It's like they were what 2-3-0-1, 3-0-2, 3-1-2, 4-1-2. They were 4-1-2, and then they went on the 3-game losing streak to go 4-4-2. Not exactly end of the world at that point, but the style of play was so poor, which we continue to talk about. And the power play was untenable. Like it was legitimately at the point of send it back. We don't even want it. Berube should be calling the ref over, going, that wasn't even a trip.
He should
Take
be
him out of the
using the
box.
challenge to
Yeah.
avoid the power play.
You know what? That actually it tipped off a player. That's not a clear off the glass now, or whatever. That's not a delay of game. It went off a guy. You're begging for it. Kick the guy out of the box. And as much as their overall record at that point had pretty much dropped them to last in the East, in a strange year where everyone's over 500 in the East. Like that's bizarre. That does
Well,
not
yeah,
happen.
bullshit 500, but like we don't need to
Yeah.
walk down the pedantic road of that, but it is
But the optics
nonsense.
of everything, and then eventually a head rolls in Savard. And look, it did feel scapegoaty to a degree. We have constantly harped on their 5-on-5 play and their inability to control play, and how you're just regularly watching games where they're getting outshot by 10, they're getting outshot by 15, shot attempts, the other team's up 30. Outrageous numbers considering the skill at the Leafs' disposal. But the power play was objectively bad. It was awful. There was no redeeming qualities of it. I don't know if it was the previous episode or a few episodes before that, but I just kept rhyming off. How does the bumper not exist? Like, where's the Babcock slap pass deflection play? Where is down low plays? Where is anyone having a clue of what to do? You couldn't watch it anymore. And part of the other concern with that is I don't think you look at Berube, as we mentioned, and go, yeah, that guy can fix the power. If Berube has the time to focus on it, I'm sure he can mastermind the X's and O's of how to fix this. So you're sitting there going, we need a good assistant or we need a head coach that has more of a clue. And they bring in Steve Sullivan. I have no idea if Steve Sullivan's going to be the answer. Obviously, they look good so far. Just a breath of fresh air in and of itself has probably done them some good. And the power play starts rolling. And that's carried them to quite a few of these wins, if we're being honest. Like if we go through it, the Ottawa win, the Jersey win, the getting a point against Detroit. I look at all those games, say power play. Power play wasn't good. They're probably not winning those games. Like they were getting the Jersey game in particular didn't feel good, right? I mean, they were down a bunch of guys. The power play pots a few, and it gave them life. And then they, now you're playing with a lead and guys start getting like rolling a little bit and they feel better about themselves. And, it's one thing being undermanned, but it's another thing being undermanned and losing. You really start to feel it. But when you're undermanned and you're winning, and now a little bit of hope has been put into you as a player, you can start to build off that. And so kind of look at this run. Honestly, they could have won every single game since Christmas. They arguably should have.
That's fair. They definitely shouldn't have dropped the one to the Islanders.
The
That's the big one. Like where you're giving up multiple leads.
The Islanders one I look at and go, you were missing half your defense. And that's what that looks like. McCabe goes down. You're missing, it's not to make excuses for the guys that are there. I think Woll should have had the tying goal. I hated that tying goal by Heineman. Just like along the ice one-timer from a guy who's not a great shooter. He's not a bad shooter. I actually like Heineman quite a bit. I was pretty happy Montreal traded him away. But I don't know. You got to make a save on that. There's no screen. There's more than enough time to slide across and read it. But you're missing half your defense and your three best shutdown guys. That's what that looks like at the end of a hockey game. The thing that bothered me about the Detroit and the Islanders loss, and I think this will be a big theme to look for moving forward, is at times I think Berube really struggles to identify who's rolling. Like Robertson scores the goal against Detroit. Great goal. Just bombs one. Had two shifts after that. Like you couldn't have watched that game and not thought to yourself, why is Easton Cowan on the ice with like 4 minutes left? And I don't want to pick on the kid. He's young, he's learning. But you're in desperation mode. You're trying to pick up points. This kid's barely played all night. His first game back in. He's kind of struggling. He looks a little bit unsure of himself and lacking confidence. And then you have Robertson, who's had a nonstop motor all night. I actually thought he was one of their better players that game. Like, forget the goal. I just thought he was really good. And he doesn't play the rest of the way, essentially. Nick Waugh barely plays. And you look at that Islanders game, and yeah, so obviously they're missing half the defense, and that plays a notable role in it. But you're watching going, how is Nick Waugh playing under 12 minutes? He's been really good for, 3 weeks now and running? And you can't hold the puck in the offensive zone, and nobody's making plays. And here you have this 6'4", 3C who's won a cup and is not afraid of a moment on a Saturday night in January. And he barely plays down the stretch, and you get caved in. And so there was some frustration, for me anyways, watching both those Detroit and Islanders games, because I'm going, I get it on one degree. You're missing half the defense. It's going to be tough in the island. But I didn't feel like they were going down with the guys that were giving it on both of those nights. And when the whole point of the team now is that they're deeper. And when that's the case, you have to be able to figure out who's going and who's not and adjust accordingly.
And also the way at least the forward lines are structured. And, you talk about the defense, being so injured, right? Like you didn't just lose one of McCabe or Tanev, like you lost both. Like that's your shutdown pair.
Yeah.
And they're both gone. So it's a huge issue. But when you're talking about the forward lines, you don't really have, this was a part of the huge deal of why it's so important to get Domi to play with Matthews if you possibly can. Like if his play justifies
he can't play anywhere else
at all. Because you look at that lineup and there isn't a line you throw for the boards And maybe some of this is Nylander's absence as well. And like I'm the last guy to rip on Nylander because he's so much more additive than he is negative that I think that the criticisms of him are kind of boring. But you look at this lineup and there's no line that you're like afraid to throw over the boards in a given situation. Like, the Matthews line, McMann has responsibility and size and speed. You can complain about Domi, but between Matthews and McMann, you should be fine there. You got the second line with Tavares, and Tavares is not a defensive wizard, but he's a smart veteran. He wins pucks battles. He's trustworthy. Nye's big, strong, someone who kills penalties as well. Michelli, not quite in the Domi zone in terms of fear, some fear for sure, but that's more with Michelli. It's more like
The
fear
dummy zone.
of turnovers in the offensive zone or the neutral zone and something coming the other way. And then
Let
you've
me
got
let
your
me try this cross zone saucer pass through three guys. See if it works.
sometimes it works. And then you've got the Nick line. Like that one is actually better than you might think, partly just because Waz doing the heavy lifting there. Like you're not desperate to throw those guys over the boards in a
You
tight
confused
defensive
me for a
situation.
second. I'm like, they're all three of their names are Nick, but of
Well,
course it's only
two isn't
two,
two
and
is
you're a
enough for
Nick,
me.
so you're
Yeah.
like that's good enough for me.
That's a
That's a
pro
Nick
Nick
line.
bias, yeah. The Nick line, like it's fine. You're not terrified. It's not ideal, but it's fine. So you don't necessarily have to coach in this way where, it's coming down to at the end of the game and you got to run Matthews into the ground, which is sometimes what happens in these situations. And like you said, I agree with you that I think Berube is a bit of a confirmation guy, bias guy, where like he gets something in his head and then he doesn't necessarily adjust as things go on. Like you talk about him not trusting Waugh in that game. Like I think you can probably trace that back to the fact that Waugh was just not great in sort of his first 25 games as a Leaf or whatever. And I feel like his mental image of where Waugh is probably hasn't lined up quite to where his play is. And to his credit, you mentioned McMann jumping up on ice time. Obviously, part of that's just being on line one. So it's not like it never happens, but he does seem like a coach sometimes where his level of belief in a player might not be reflective of what's happening in that moment. It might be more of like a broader opinion from earlier in the year or, maybe even previous season. If I think about Benoit, for instance, how it took so long for Benoit to ever take a turn outside the lineup, like his play this season justified him sitting down much before he did. But again, I think Bruba's like, oh yeah, I know what this guy really brings. And so there was a little bit too much hesitance there.
Now, I'm very loath to do this to make a Jays comparison because I'm not saying that the Leafs are going on some sort of Cinderella run here. But one of the things we talked about a lot is as much as everyone early on was like, oh, look at the Jays, now look at the Leafs. This is brutal. We sat here and went, the Jays were terrible for the first few months of the year. Just none of the quote unquote fans were watching. They stunk. But one thing that came through them being bad is they started playing some of these guys, which is what happens. And so the comparison ish, I guess I would make is do you think that there's an element of because I was watching them against Florida and I was kind of I thought they were really good against Florida.
They
Like
were great in the first two periods. I wanted
yeah,
to come away from that game and be like, this is one of those wins where I have no reservations about it, and then not a strong finish. But that's a good win. That's a really good win.
I thought it was a really good win, and I don't know. As I watched it, I rewatched it again this morning with Mateo, made him watch it, and got to indoctrinate him early. But like they took back-to-back penalties to start. The Rielly penalty, which was just like he's just getting torched like once a night. I know people are going to say that he was better in that game. Fine enough, but
It's a tough stretch.
how are you getting beat by Lundell there with like 1 second on the clock? I mean, I don't understand. Carlo was stunned. You could tell. Like he was taking his guy and he like looks like, what the hell? Like, how are you getting beat like that? And then Myers immediately takes an out of like over the glass penalty right after they kill that penalty. And it kills you a little bit. And they did kind of smooth things out from there. They got the power play. They probably could have scored. Like I would like to have Matthews get that chance. I would like to have Matthews get like four chances again
Yeah,
in that.
Matthews should have exited that game with multiple goals
Like
for sure.
like he could have replicated the 4 goal night in that game. He had a ton of
100%.
chances. And then Wall lets in a terrible goal. And so I don't know, like I didn't look at the third and say like that was an abomination. I was kind of like, well, you took some penalties and
I think that I was just, it's been so rare this season to see a game where you're like wire to wire. This team
yeah.
has looked the way you want them to look, and that's a win that you can like really feel great about. And
But
yeah, there are way more positives than negatives out of this game. Like, a lot of people talking about sort of the physicality, the response to the hit on Lawton. People felt like they were right there with Florida and, ultimately, outplaying them, I think, pretty handily through two periods. It's
to,
not the same Florida, yada yada yada, but like you'll take that any day of the week.
so to that point, which circles back to the Toronto Blue Jays point here, is I was watching a ton of guys going, well, it's nice to see this guy get some ice time and he's actually good at hockey and maybe you should play him more. Right? Like the if I had told you these line combinations in the summer, if I was like, well, Willie's gonna be out, you're gonna be running McMann on line one with Domi and Matthews and Nyes, Michelli, Tavares, and then the not the Nick line, but that the young kid line centered by Nick Waugh, you would have been like, this is a joke. Like, how is that your lineup at this point? I would have been like, this is a joke. How is that your lineup?
Yeah,
And
they're not combinations you haven't really considered. I think of Michelli and Nyes. Like I've never even drew that up once in my head for them to be on the same line because you think of them both being left wingers, I guess, on the roster. But
you didn't think about
I'm,
Michelli playing on the first line with Matthews and Nyes at any point? Ah, you
I
probably
mean,
did. You probably did.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess with Tavares. I mean, that
Yeah.
was such a brief moment in history, the Michelli Matthews, that it's been wiped
Yeah.
out. But like that second line is not something that would have entered my
But
head. The third line, obviously, yeah, not even close
no.
to
But you look at
being
that
in
game
consideration.
and it was like I thought Michelli was unbelievable in that game.
He was good.
For like what he is, like within the context of what he is.
Like, let's be clear.
He
Let's draw the
yeah.
box. Make sure
He's
that he's
not
in
like
that box.
he's not like William Nylander unbelievable. He's like for Matthias Michelli, I thought he was unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
he was dancing. Like when he was on the ice, I got actively excited because he was just making plays. He was finding guys. He was holding on to pucks. He was tenacious. Like um the Matthews goal, right? He gets boarded in the corner before Nyes comes and it should have been a penalty, but whatever. And I thought to myself, like, how many small skill guys have, and not Michelli's not tough, but how many small skill guys have the Leafs had over the years that wouldn't even have gone to the corner because Mikkola was there and he's a unit. And like he was strong on pucks, like he was holding pucks and making plays, and he has an innate ability. Like he's super crafty, he's super slippery. He loves saucering pucks a little bit too much. Like I'm always gonna kind of harp on it. I think you have to, but like he was really fun to watch. Like he is moving things around on the power play in a really crafty and intelligent way. Like, I almost link it to, if you watch a basketball game and a team puts two point guards on at points, they're like, we need to move the ball a little bit more. Let's put another point guard on. Like that's what it feels like with Michelli. And like Robertson was really like him. I didn't love the first few shifts from the Leafs, but then Robertson drew that penalty with just a dog of a shift. And from that point forward, I thought the Leafs were great. And it all started with just a hard effort shift. Obviously, Cowan scores the goal. I thought he was skating really well. And again, just like getting in on the forecheck, moving pucks, making plays, as best as you can expect a rookie to against a veteran team like Florida. Who, by the way, I also enjoyed that when the Leafs were beating them 3-0 and handing their ass to them, they were called the Florida Panthers. But the second that they made it 3-1, suddenly they were called the defending Stanley Cup champions. I really enjoyed that. That was
The defending Stanley Cup champion tag for them is
uh,
so stupid right now because they're not that
it's
team.
it's
Like they're just
three
not that team right now.
it's 3-1. The defending Stanley Cup champions have scored, but when the Leafs were dummying them through 40, it was the Florida Panthers are not looking that great. Right? So, like all three of those guys, I thought McMann we've talked about, like he played over 19 minutes in that game. He was fantastic.
Like when you
And
think about this team and where there could be some potential upside, right? Like it's a veteran team, especially on the back end. Like none of the defensemen are going to suddenly find a new level. Like, Stecher was obviously a great find, and OEL deserves a lot of credit because this is his best season as a Leaf. But there's not a ton of upside there. There's not a ton of prospects. There's definitely not a ton of draft picks. So when you think about like how do the Leafs get better, like one of them is sort of like the return of Matthews and like TBD. We'll
That's
see.
the biggest one.
That's the big one. But like when it comes to, Michelli, Robertson, Cowan, like Nyes is young too. Nyes
Yeah.
will get better. But like those are, maybe you don't want to be in a situation where those are like the key sources of upside for your team. But like those are the guys who theoretically can improve and can sneakily raise their level and be more prominent members of the team and provide maybe more than you expected because they just take a little bit of a set. Like, I think we're seeing that with Robertson. Like I think Robertson has been better this season than he's been in previous years. Again, you don't want to overstate it and say like, okay, this guy's arrived as whatever, but like those players are partially important for this second, but also because there's not that much potential growth around this team. And those are players who can provide a little bit. And that doesn't mean they're going to become first line stalwarts. They're not going to be on Legends Row or anything, but like there's just not a lot of avenues for the Leafs to get better. And part of the way they do that is by giving these younger guys. Yeah, and again, we don't think about Robertson as being young because he's been around for so long, but like
He's
he is
young.
still a younger guy. Michelli's a younger guy, not again, not a 21-year-old, but a younger guy, and obviously Cowan as the rookie. Like giving these guys a legitimate chance to grow, it can help the team grow.
And I just, I think there's been so much talk about finding a winger for Matthews and how are they going to add and all that. And look, I don't think that they obviously shouldn't be active buyers anyway. I think they've spent a lot of money on this core and it's kind of sink or swim time per verboot. We don't even know if they're gonna make the playoffs. So
And
like
even if you felt more confident, like who is a player out there that you can afford with the assets you have, you think is going to put you in a different tier? Like I
no,
don't see a route to
you,
that working.
you'd have to probably take on a guy and hope that he looks better here than he does elsewhere. Potentially even risk taking on a contract of sorts, like a Jonathan Marchessault kind of thing, right? But all that to say is I look at the forward group and say there's 14 guys here. Like I'm generally okay with this forward group. Obviously could it be better? Yeah. Like no shit. But I'm okay if they're healthy, I'm okay with riding with the 14 that they have.
Okay with characterizing it as 13 and Yarncroak also. But that's a personal
I,
hobby horse. Every year, I guess I pick on some bottom six forward.
look, he's gotten worse. Like I just think he's clearly lost a step. Like he doesn't cheat you on effort and he doesn't cheat the game in terms of how he checks and plays defensively. He's not getting to the puck on time. He's not getting to his spots on time. And like he's on the smaller side. His shot has seemingly like he used to have a beautiful shot.
He was
And
a real threat for a while there.
like he had 20 goals first year with the Leafs. And but I still think he can take competent shifts. If he came in on the
It's not a
fourth line,
disaster. It's
if he
not. He's not the Philip Myers of your forward core.
no, if he came in for a game in the playoffs or whatever, or any sort of game, he's in right now. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Would I like to see Quillen? Yes. I think he has wheels. I think it'd be nice to learn from Lawton. But I get that they're also, they're like, we need to, this isn't time to like, clap hands with children. Like we're trying to play with guys that have played in the NHL and like collect points and make sure we take care of business. So I understand. But, all that to say is I'm okay with the forward group as is. I look at most of the guys and say, like, who wouldn't you want back next year already in the first place? Like if you go through it and like you're gonna get these people that say like blow it up, rebuild at all nonsense. I'm not even gonna remotely go there. If you get Matthews back to 55, whatever goal Matthews, that's good defensively and is a 1C at 29 years old, yeah, you ride that to the absolute ground. If you could ride that for 10 more years, you ride it for 10 more years. until he indicates some sort of I don't want to be here anymore, or his game has fully just collapsed on itself to you're like, we just need to get away from this and move on. You ride him as long as you possibly can. So you're like, okay, Matthews, Nylander, Nyes, JT's not going anywhere. Cowan isn't going anywhere, nor should he. That's five. You're not going to get rid of Nick Waugh. He's a quality player, quality top nine player, signed at a reasonable hit for 3 mil. That's six. Like, do you want to get rid of Nick Robertson? I'm not getting rid of Nick Robertson at this point. At this point, I'm actively debating, do I offer him term on this deal? And to which I would say yes. At
If you
minimum,
can,
2 years.
if you can buy quasi low, then yeah, I mean that's interesting. I think yeah, the guys you're not getting back.
I wouldn't even be too concerned about the UFA pool is so bad. Like, I don't know how you're going to spend the money to even hit the max. Like, if he was like, I'd sign three by like 3.5, be like, okay.
You gotta definitely talk to Berube about like this guy's not on the fourth line.
I don't care about
If you
Craig. Like,
well, yeah, we'll see
yeah.
how long that goes. Yeah, I mean the
So,
guys you would
so that,
lose, Lawton and McMahon are guys you'd happily have back too. Like
so,
that's
so
just a
that's,
contract thing.
yeah, so that's seven with those guys. Like, I would like to bring back McMahon. He's 29, he's going to be 30. I get it. But he's also shown himself capable of playing up and down the lineup with anybody. He's literally been good with every single center that they've had in various roles and on either wing and on both special team units when called upon. Like, I'm not breaking the bank for him. I'm just saying that's 8 forwards right there that you would all consider top nine forwards, and a chunk of them, let's call it, are young and you would expect to be better next year. Nyes, Cowan, Robertson. And then that doesn't include Michelli. Lorenza's a staple on your fourth line. Like, you're probably not getting rid of Joshua at this rate, so he's probably on the fourth line as well. If you sign Lawton, that's your fourth line. Like, you're looking at like a forward spot. Like, I'm almost looking at it saying like, is there like a guy or two I don't want next year that I could cash in on now? A la Max Domi. A la, do we envision Matthias Michelli being in our plans in the future?
Well, I mean, I think that the fit of having both Michelli and Domi has always been a bit dicey. Like
And
having,
Robertson and Cowan.
well, yeah, but like even just those two players, Domi and Michelli, serving like quasi similar roles, similar strengths, similar flaws. And I think in a perfect world, you would find a way to get rid of Domi and you'd find a way to keep Michelli around. But I don't know how that's actually going to happen mechanically.
The weirdest thing about Domi is I'm actually almost like weary of. I don't think it's complete coincidence that Matthews has been good with him. Like, they have chemistry. Like, that's actually a real thing. Like, I don't think that's a made up. I'm not watching going like man, Domi's just picking up points out of his ass because he's beside Matthews. I'm like, Domi's like actually making plays and making things happen, and him and Matthews like playing together. Obviously, he likes playing with Matthews. He would be insane to not like playing with Matthews. But Matthews, for some insane reason, likes playing with Max Domi. Like, Domi's third on their, and we said McMahon second. Domi's third on the forward group in time on ice per game in this run, which is crazy. He has 5 assists in 6 games in that time. Some nice ones too, like genuinely. And like, he's the guy that I'm like most torn on, because in my mind I'm like, yeah, I would trade him and like just get rid of the contract, and like we've, for any number of reasons that we've outlined for months on end here. But then at the same time I'm like, I don't know, there's something there with him and Matthews, and do you really want to mess with that? Do
But
you really want to potentially piss off Matthews? He's finally looking like himself for the first time this year.
the
And
most
then,
optimistic version of that is here's Max Domi, cheap first line winger.
yeah, I
Like
don't
that,
love it either. I think it's just a conundrum, Nick. That's all
yeah.
I'm just spelling
It's
that out. It's just weird. I just
it's
find it
like
weird.
that statement is a literal fact. He can be on the first line and he could be cheap in the context of that role and possibly in the context of what he would produce in that role.
I've thought
And
about this a lot. Is there a single other player in the league that you sit there and go, pretty good on the first line, absolutely terrible everywhere else in the lineup?
Usually
I,
not. Usually there's some kind of utility somewhere else.
I can't think of a single guy like him. It's the weirdest situation. I'm not even advocating to keep him. I'm not advocating to trade him. I am just saying it is a jigsaw in a maze in a puzzle. Like it's just thinking it through is just bizarre to me. But at the same time, I generally shade towards if you could get rid of the contract, I probably would. But I find it a frustrating one to really square.
Yeah, I mean his value is so tied to Matthews. So Matthews has to be good, Matthews has to be healthy, and the coach has to agree to play him with Matthews. And getting all those three things to work at the same time feels like a lot to bet on given the amount of money he's making. But it's not disastrous either with the cap going up. Like I don't think the Leafs feel like they're in this massive crunch and his
It
contract is causing problems for them, especially with the
He's
weak
not
free
even a
agent
cap
pool.
problem at this rate. Honestly, it's more of a roster spot problem. It's like, do you think they can upgrade? Well, obviously, they could, but how? If you're signing Alex Tuck, yeah, get rid of him.
Yeah.
Obviously,
That
but
doesn't seem like the most likely outcome here.
right. So what are so you're gonna move off something that you know works to try somebody else that you don't know necessarily if that works.
And part of this also is that Matthews, we keep asking Matthews to be that guy who it doesn't even matter who you put him with because he's so good and he drives any
And
line.
and he's
And
doing that right now though.
he's doing that right now, but he hasn't always done that in the last two seasons. Like he
No.
hasn't always had his play be at that level. And so the idea of like, ooh, do you want to take Max Domi away? Like 3 years ago or something, like that would be such an insane thought. Like, oh, I don't know if we want to take Max Domi away. Like it's really Matthews is really humming right
But he
now.
had
Like,
Marner then.
yeah.
For all his warts, also he's pacing for 84 points, by the way, for $12 million dollars for all the Marner's really going to take off when he's away from this market. I'm sure.
Well, I
But
mean, for everything that's happened, like all the baggage and everything, like Matthews and Marner were
for
built in terms of
sure.
players they are to play together. Like they're the
Yeah. No,
perfect
for
players
sure
to
they
play
were.
together.
But
And
but now you're
neither
bank
is as good without the other.
at best you would be not at best, but one of the scenarios which would be the best possible way for the scenario to play out, to be honest, would be as you move off of him because you think Cowan is ready to move
Yeah.
up. Because that one makes sense. I just don't think Cowan's ready for 17 minutes a night on the top line
He'd have to
playing.
show a ton and then he'd have to show
And
that real and sometimes
yeah,
progression isn't the slow thing. Sometimes a guy kind of clicks and then you see a month and you're like, holy shit, he really found something. And maybe that could happen with Cowan in March and we'd feel differently about it. It's just we don't know yet.
and admittedly, the other thing that I like is, and genuinely I do, is Domi fought Ekblad last night. And the line just feels he's not he's not a bodyguard. I don't think he's out there patrolling the ice. But it is nice at times, especially for a team that has generally been embarrassing when confronted physically, to sit there and go, there's this guy on the ice and he has a bit of a screw loose and he'll lose his mind if someone touches Matthews. And it's nice to know because before that wasn't the case.
And that's
Like
probably part of why Matthews likes playing with them. Like obviously the big thing is that Domi just feeds him to like a ludicrous degree. Like he's got one
yeah,
button stuck down on the controller, but like there's also this other
blinders.
physical aspect.
Like I get it. So look, all that to say is I look at the forward group and I look at the team and I say I think it's a pretty good forward group. And honestly, I would approach things moving forward almost in the vein of like, who do I want here next year? And if there's guys that we've identified that I don't want here next year, like, is this the time to move off them? Is there value or potential swap of some sort? Or do I hold the guy, let's say like a Michelli, because he's an RFA, and then debate something in the offseason? Or do I just wait it out for the time being? Because Michelli's been good. Like he's been crafty. This is what the Michelli that you wanted to see when he came here. And he's still young enough that he can easily get better and more consistent and yada, yada, yada. So, like, it's a pretty jam-packed group. Like, after everything, the ironic part is they need help on defense. and it's like impossible to find.
Well, yeah, I would say, and we don't have to walk too far back down the road on the forward group. I will say that there's a lot of people that I'd agree with you that you're sort of happy to keep and you're happy to have them be a part of the future, but at the same time, you're not like, I gotta have this guy or else. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's the Matthews and then there's the Nylander and you have your high hopes for Nyes and Cowan and Tavares is going to be there. But like as much as you say about these guys, like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to have them on the team next year, that doesn't mean it's a must. Like if the opportunity
No.
came to make the right deal, they're not those must. But also that's how every team works. Like there's no
Yeah.
team in the NHL who's like, yeah, I've got these 12 incredible forwards and they're all 23 and they're locked up for the next 8 years. Like, the bottom of a lineup is going to kind of shuffle and people come in and out, and that's part of it. The
The
defense,
UFA market's also terrible.
yeah, it's not promising. The on defense, oh man. I mean, like people want to have the Rielly existential crisis every single year. That feels like a bit of a stable situation to me. Like I don't know. I mean, unless
It
he tires of it, and then like is anyone even remotely
it
interested in his contract or some version of retention on that? Like he's a very tricky player.
it
The
feels
rest
like
of
an
it,
off-season move to me. I like
yeah, no, that's not happening in season.
how are you
And then
doing it now anyways with if Tanev's out to what? Play Philip Myers every night? That's insane. You're not doing that. You're not,
no,
obviously.
you're living with the warts of Rielly at the moment, and you're hoping that he plays better, which has kind of been what they've been doing for years. You live with the warts, you hope he plays better, you give him a new partner, you hope that works. Mixed results on that at this point.
I mean, I think there's a world where you can just shelter him. If McCabe comes back, you can just pair McCabe with Carlo, and there's your shutdown pairing. And then you pair Ekman Larson and Stecher. They played together last night. The way Stetcher's going is that would be a solid top four pairing. And Ekman Larson, too. Obviously, he's been really good this year as well. And now you're sheltering Rielly more in the 18-minute-ish range. And he can give you 18 minutes. And he's productive. And he's been productive in the playoffs, right? Like people forget that all the time. Like he genuinely has been productive in the playoffs. And I understand it from, well, he's defensive liability, he's getting scored on, yada yada yada. But if they bring in some other guy who isn't like a defensive liability and all that, but then they get to games down the stretch and he's providing no offense, definitely not to the level that Rielly would, and the playoffs, then people are going to say, well, now they have no scoring from the back end. Are we banking on Ekman Larson being like a 35-point guy at this point? As you bring in another 35, 40-point guy like Rasmus Anderson, it's not a ton of production.
No, it's not the same situation with Nylander where I'm willing to say like without a doubt the the qualities it brings are so much bigger than the flaws that just fucking forget about it. I don't want to have the conversation. Like
Yeah.
Rielly's not in that place,
No.
but he is in a place where like there aren't a ton of defensemen who are as good as he is as providing a little bit of additive offense. I think part of it with the playoffs is that teams are detail oriented and they're tight checking in the playoffs. And sometimes you need like a little bit of a chaotic element. You need someone to take a risk to make something happen because if you just kind of play it safe, everything is covered off. And Rielly is someone who, finds himself in a rush. It's not really anyone else who does that on the team. Stecher weirdly has his moments sometimes, but I never feel like that's going to result in a goal. And Ekman Larson is a good offensive defenseman, but a lot of that happens from the point. Like Rielly is able to get down into the play. Like as much as it's been bad recently. Like there's been some really bad moments. He's getting put on some posters, and if you want to run the like Morgan Rielly highlights of the last 2 weeks reel, like it is ugly. And so, there's not that much advantage to like standing up for him. But I don't think what he is as a player to me has changed in some fundamental way because he's had like a rough couple weeks here. I'm not out
Yeah,
here
he's
thinking like
always been this
he's
guy.
suddenly become dog shit when he used to be great. Like he's broadly the guy he's been recently. Like years ago he was better than he is now, like especially as a skater. But he's broadly today what he's been over the last couple of years, and I think should probably be discussed in that vein as opposed to people saying that, oh, something's happened in the last 3 weeks and suddenly he's become this horrible black hole that he never was before.
It's not suddenly, but I definitely don't remember a stretch to this point where he's getting just cooked one on one the way that he has been of late. Like it's been pretty exceptional the level
It's
to which
maybe I'm downplaying that too much. Like I said, it is a nasty highlight reel. Like it is
it's
ugly.
bad.
There's some bad stuff going on.
That Lundell one was really frustrating for me. It would just end of the period. They played so well through 40. Just how's he cooking you there? And then you get to the rest of the defense, though. I mean the questions for them will be like, what's the deal with Tanev? Obviously, is this the reality for Tanev moving forward, or if he shut down and has a summer, and is he able to come back and give you another year, like a good one?
We're talking year 3 of the 6-year contract.
Yeah, but I mean
Can he give
that
you that halfway to the contract? Which I
T
guess, to be fair, people kind of knew.
Tanev's absence is honestly the biggest. To me, that's the biggest reason they are where they are this year. It's not Marner. I'd actually rank it like Tanev goaltending Marner. The goaltending was atrocious for months, and it finally settled. And that was when they heated up a little bit, and then they had the little dip. They got rid of Marc Savard finally because he had no clue what he was doing at any point, and actively embarrassed himself after he got fired by posting like a profile pic with Boston Bruins crap on. Just immature and a child. What a privilege it is to work for the Leafs, and you do that immediately after getting fired. That is absolute ridiculous. So they finally got rid of him, but they've been one of the worst teams in the league this year in terms of win percentage after leading in the first period and the second period. Like to me, Tanev, not only is he really good on the ice, he's really good off the ice. I think Tanev has a quality to him where he'll kind of, and guys commented on this last year too, where he'd look and be like, what the hell are we doing out there in terms of defending and our habits? And it's not a detail-oriented coaching staff. Like I think Derek Lalonde is detailed. The penalty kill is really
I was
good.
gonna say the penalty kill has been really, really good, pretty much the whole way through.
Yeah, we've talked about it a million times. I think he's had a significant impact there. I think he's had I'm sure he's had a large impact on this power play. The power play was good in Detroit when he was there too. Obviously, it was good in Tampa. I don't think he had much to do with it when it was in Tampa, but he's been in and around it. And we know that he's involved in the power play stuff now. I don't think it's just Sullivan coming in mastermind out of nowhere in the American Hockey League.
I'd be
So,
surprised. As someone who liked Stevie Sullivan a lot as a player, I'd like to believe that narrative, but I would be surprised.
right, but losing that voice of Tanev in the room to kind of look at guys and say like this is a joke, this is not how we defend. I think that's had a significant impact. I'll never be able to sit here and measure that for you, or no one will. But what he brings on the ice, what he brings off the ice, the entire package is it just they've really struggled. I mean, we're sitting here talking up Troy Stecher as top 4D man. And I've loved Stecher. I've loved him. It's
He's
not a
given
knock
you
on him.
more than you could conceive, more
Yeah.
than you could have dreamed of. Like no, even the
Yeah.
craziest homer would never have predicted what Stetcher has given them.
But we're talking that up in part because Tanev is out. And so they've hedged it reasonably. And to me now, like it's really on Carlo. They have to challenge Carlo. We paid a lot for you, and for a reason. And if you look at the D market this summer, it's terrible again. And I'm sure it's going to get worse, whether Tampa signs Darren Radish or someone trades for Anderson and inks him to a contract extension this deadline. Like it's going to get watered down even further before July 1 hits. And so you can't find guys,
Well,
especially
people
guys like Carlo.
people think, oh, the Leafs, they're going to be a team that spends to the top of an expanded cap, and that's going to allow them to shop and bring in more players. But the reality is, when the cap goes up, everyone can just afford their own guys.
Yeah.
And then they just extend their own guys. And that's been what we've seen thus far. We'll see how it goes. And there's certain teams that are more so poverty franchises. And I'm sure certain players will spring loose because they always do. But the fact that there's more money available for the Leafs and they're not in that kind of like Dubas era, COVID, flat cap crunch zone doesn't mean that they're suddenly going to get a bunch of impact players in free agency.
No. And so to me, you got to challenge Carlo. And like the challenge isn't be a top pairing defenseman. No one's saying that. The challenge is you got to be a shutdown defenseman. That's what you are. We traded a lot for you. No one traded for Carlo saying this guy's a 40-point D man. He just needs a different opportunity. It was you've shown yourself capable of playing against top players and succeeding at a high rate and a high performance level. You need to do that now. You've had the surgery, you had the infection. It wasn't great, but you're back now. Tanev is out. This is the job. Like you have a responsibility here for your end of the bargain. And if he does that, great. Honestly, their defense would actually look pretty good on paper. And if he doesn't, they're going to be in trouble. Now, it was one game. We've seen one game since we started recording this podcast. It felt good to have him back. I liked him in the game. I thought he was solid.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it was a good start. Like every player in Carlo's vein is someone I'm always going to say, like, give me time to watch it because
Yeah.
they're just like the whole point is low events. So like I need to see this play out over a longer period of time. But yeah, you'd be encouraged with how that started. And the need is so great on the right side of this defense. And with Tanev out, yeah, they did trade a lot for him, and he has not lived up to the billing, and he could be a huge factor in getting them across the finish line here and making them feel good about the fact that they went on a bit of a limb to get this player.
He also ripped a few like actual outlet passes. I mean, this it sounds like an incredibly low bar, but early on in the season, I was watching him going, "What are you doing? You're just slapping it off the glass, even when there's wide open outlets." And he actually made a few plays where there was one, I think it was in the first period, where he kind of blocked a shot with his chest and then stepped up on the puck and hit Michelli for an outlet on the tape, and they went down the ice. It's like just things like that. Like just make simple plays, but actually on the tape and moving the puck out, getting in the way, being the massive man that you are. I'm not. Would it be nice once in a while if you ran someone? Yes. Do I think that you should do that? Yes. But you don't need to go around killing guys all the time. But do you need to see you be an actual pain in the ass for guys to get on the inside, you to be physical in front of the Leafs net and actually put some pucks on guys' tape so that it moves out of the zone cleanly. Like that was a promising game one for him, for me. I would like to see him with McCabe. I do think that should be their shutdown tandem now. I think that there's potential for that to be actually a really good pairing, to be honest with you. So you kind of look at it and say, like, it'd be nice if they could add a D-man. I don't really think that they're going to be able to, or someone of
I'd be
significance
surprised.
anyway. And that, but again, this is fine. If this is the team to me, that I'm okay looking at this group and saying sink or swim. I think they're deep. I think they have a lot of things that they could move around. I think even if the top six are healthy on defense, they could move those guys around into any number of pairings that I think are interesting. It's not like here are your guys and this is the lineup and it is what it is. I think there's all sorts of versatility to move guys up and down the lineup and play with certain things and figure it out. And it's a veteran enough group. And so I think that they're in a position to like be competitive and not only make the playoffs but do some damage. But obviously they need to one, like Matthews needs to continue this. Two, they need to get healthy and actually stay healthy. It always feels like, oh, Carlo's about to come back. McCabe got hurt. It would be nice to just be healthy for a run of play. God forbid Anthony Stolarz returns. Oh,
I
like feel free. And you look at their last run of play. I know the shot metrics haven't been great, and people will point to that. But when the scores have actually been tighter, they're controlling play. Like they controlled Florida. The first 40 minutes, they actively controlled them. I know that the numbers got a little bit lopsided as that game went on, but I don't know. I'm kind of looking at that going score effects by and large.
I think that
So
score effects sometimes affect them more than the average team, though, too. Like, I think sometimes they get overly cautious when they have a lead, and a team that already doesn't necessarily consistently control play, that becomes even worse for them. And then they do have some of these kind of nasty third periods recently. Like that feels like a little bit of part of the Berube, keeping everything to the outside, don't take any risk style. Like it really gets hammered home in some of these moments. And to be fair, it worked last season. Like they were incredible at holding leads last season. So I understand why there isn't some philosophical shift there, but it certainly feels like there's an element of turtling that goes on that's not exactly fun
yeah,
to watch.
they need to work on it for sure. They need to grind pucks better in the offensive zone, 100%. It's not letting them off the hook, but I think a lot of the games to me have actually felt more like the Ottawa series of late, where I'm like, you know what, when the game was kind of in the balance early on, the Leafs were actually dictating things, and then once they took the lead, they retreated almost to an unacceptable level, and then the numbers became what they were, and then that's the shot rate people are looking at more so than right. And we said it that whole Ottawa series, like I don't know what people are talking about. The Leafs are way better than this Ottawa team. Like you watch that Florida game like 10 times over, you're not going to watch that game and say Florida was better because of the
No,
shot
absolutely
metrics,
not.
right? So I think a few more of those games of these games of late have so they're starting to build it a little bit. And the interesting thing is with a bunch of these kind of like depth guys make the quote unquote Blue Jays comparison is there's enough building there where if guys aren't playing well, they can finally just tell other guys to just F off and sit on the bench. You're not doing it tonight? Fine. I'm going with Robertson. I'm going with Cowan. But that's on Berube. Like Berube to me, like that he started to the breakouts are finally looking competent. The power play is no longer a joke because Marc Savard's not here. The penalty kill is good. I think his in-game adjustments need to be a little bit better at times, a little bit crisper.
The
I think,
goaltending's broadly sharp too. I think like we don't
yeah,
talk about that too much, but Hildeby's been better than expected when called upon, and Wool has been leaned on and has generally risen to the occasion. Mentioned that rough goal, but generally Wool's been really good too. And yeah, that's a big that is a huge part of this too. Like they're counting on the goaltending to be good. To be fair, it probably should be. Like I think both you and I like Wool from a talent perspective, and Hill to be, he looks all right. And like you said,
it.
Stolarz could return at some point. Who knows?
I'd feel really good if Stolarz could return. If you were like he's coming back by the end of this month, like McCabe and Nylander coming back this week, and you're getting Stolarz back by the end of the month, I'd actually feel really good,
Well, it could
like
also make
really
you feel
good.
better about not overworking Wool potentially.
I thought Wool was shaky against Florida, to be honest with you. I thought he's like he did make some good saves. I know the Verhaeghe goal was terrible, but there was any number of plays where like Florida like dumped it in and he was like very weird tracking it or looking behind himself. It's been bizarre for me. And then like he had a shutout against Jersey and he was really good. Like he's just been a little bit. It's not necessarily reflected in the numbers, but just kind of like watching him in net and the confidence level, like when he's on, it feels unbelievable. You're like, I don't care when guys shoot. It's like he's so big and he's so calm, and it hasn't felt like that for me. Like that goal that he allowed against Florida felt like it when it happened. I was waiting for it to happen basically all night based on the way he was playing. I just didn't think Florida was creating much of anything, so it didn't ultimately burn them. So now you kind of like look at it, and I also want to flag like people talk so much about four lines. I know we're about to wrap up here, but over the years, like this is what four lines looks like. Like Nick Waugh actually is good. We spent a lot of time on him on the summer when they got him. Like you don't play 15 minutes a night for a cup winner if you're not good. And you're seeing that. You're now actually seeing him be really good centering two completely different third lines. One with Joshua and McMahon, that was a checking line, and they were really good. Like they could go back to that line, I'd be happy at some point. And now you're seeing him center two kids that are pushing for offense. And he looks great in that role too. Like he's like that's an actual third line where they're hopping over the boards and I'm excited. Like they're making things happen. Again, like to me, they swung that game early on against Florida. They go out, have a great shift. Robertson draws a power play. The power play was good. That power play to me also was another example of in the Savard era, not only was it terrible and not scoring, but it was so unbelievably bad that it was actually just bleeding into your 5-on-5 play because it was just 2 minutes of absolute garbage. Like the other team would feed off of it. That Florida game is a great example
And
to
you were
me.
using up shifts of your best players too,
Yeah,
which is like a wild way to think out of power play, but that's what was happening.
but that Florida game to me was a great example. They go 0 for 3 on the power play, but they had great chances on all three. And they were flying after those power plays because they built momentum. Like you don't have to you're not scoring on every power play ever. Good power plays click at like 30%. But you have to generate things and you have to build your game through them. And that was happening. Like you saw in Jersey, they did cash those goals, and you could see it build through their game and their confidence. Florida, they didn't, but their game built forward on it. And now they're at a point where there is enough talent and depth where like the first unit doesn't score in the first minute and change, like get off. And the second unit comes on and you're like, I'm cool with this. Sure. Give Robertson and McMann 50 seconds on the power play. Let's see if they do something. McMahon made an unreal little head fake, fake drop pass to the D man and then cross ice pass to Robertson for a one timer. I was like, all right, I can, like, you're good with it. But that's actual depth. Like, that's kind of the stuff that people have pined for over the years. But it only works because Matthews is also lighting it up as a top line guy. You can't have the depth with Matthews playing like crap for 30 games. You need him to be a dude.
And he has been. And I think, when we talk next week, that's going to be a part of it, right? It's going to be like, has this Matthews stretch continued? Is he still lighting it up? And that's going to be kind of the differentiator in all likelihood between, is this a huge run? Are we talking like 10 plus game run of like really good hockey and tons of points for the Leafs and then back in the hunt? Or, like last time we spoke, optimism, we get off the
And then,
line,
yeah.
brutal. So like I think Matthews obviously it's not some great revelation to say this, but he's going to be the one who does the most to determine where that trajectory goes.
And part of it, well, too, but part of it too is does Nylander come back and go on a heater? Like, does he get a few weeks here to recharge mentally? Because he looked like exhausted mentally, not physically, just mentally in his body language prior to getting hurt. Does he reset here and come back and torch the league? Because he can. He could just come back and torch the league until the Olympics. And if he does, the Leafs are going to be in a good spot. You're going to feel good about where the Leafs are.
It could be a pretty exciting show next week. We'll see
Here,
with Matthews,
if he
Nylander,
does come
Carlo.
back, here I have a quick question for you. If he does come back between now and then, what do you do with the lineup?
Oh,
It's a hard question. There's
I
no
don't
right
know.
answer. I'm
I
just
don't know.
curious.
God, I always keep thinking that Nyes Tavares Nylander should work, and then it never does.
No,
But
it
like that,
doesn't.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe Michelli Tavares Nylander, like that line had quite a bit of success, and then maybe
Where
you
does Nice
go
go?
Nyes, Waugh, and one of Robertson or Cowan, and then you think that line creates a little bit of offense. I'm not touching the first line right now. I
No,
don't
I
really want
wouldn't.
to deal with that.
I
So
wouldn't
yeah,
touch the
that's what I would
first.
do. Michelli, Tavares, Nylander, Waugh, Nyes, and whoever of the two younger forwards you think is playing better in the moment.
So you're gonna healthy scratch Robertson potentially.
Well, I could do. I mean, they've done Lorentz, Lawton, Cowan, so you could do Lorentz, Lawton, Robertson. I'd scratching Yarncroke.
Here's my only issue with it is, and it's the thing that would keep me up a little bit at night where I Berube, is they're using that Lawton line as a proper like checking matchup line. Like that part of the reason their other lines are eating is because they're like throwing shit on Lawton, Lorentz, and Yarncroke. And you can't do that with Cowan there. It's terrible.
but you might get a little bit more often. Like you might get
You might,
might get a trade-off.
but then you're looking at Matthews and you're like, actually, it's more back to you lighting it up. At the same time, if you're on the road, maybe you do sit there and say, I want four lines with a little bit more offensive juice. Like I can't control the matchups as much, so now why don't I just roll four lines a little bit better? They've been bad on the road this year, really good at home. So maybe you do that. Like I shade towards what you're saying in terms of reuniting Nylander, Tavares, Michelli, dropping Nyes to play with Waugh and Robertson specifically, because I'm not dropping Robertson to the fourth line. I
Yeah,
think he's
yeah,
earned.
Robertson, unless whatever. Cowan was incredibly hot
And
in 2 games or something.
yeah, and then going between Cowan and Yarncroke on that line, depending on the matchup and however guys going. Like that's likely what I would do. I just I'm weary of like I get it. People look at it on paper. I'm just saying in reality, the way that they're using that line is really important. That line was really good against Florida. Laurent should have had a hat trick against Florida, right?
Yeah.
But but that aside, you're like that line is not the same utility if you put Cal in there straight up. So is it worth it? Potentially. Do I understand? But do I understand why they would do it? Yes. I'm just saying the domino effect of that could kind of throw things for a bit more of a loop than I think people are giving credit for.
But the
All
overall effect of going from, and we are really wrapping here, but the overall effect of going from the lineup they currently have to that lineup that we just sort of proposed is you're adding Nylander and you're adding Cowan to the fourth line. So I
yeah,
do think that like that amount of offensive boost should offset a
and you have Nyes
defensive
on the third
negative.
line. That looks like actual depth, Nick. I don't
Yeah.
know. But
All
again,
right.
provided Matthews carries the mail with McMann and Domi.
We will be tracking all of that in the days to come. We really appreciate everyone who is listening in. We like it even more if you leave ratings and reviews, and we'll be back with you again next week.